What's going on? This is Ryan with Automatic Comics. In this video today, got a couple things we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about where you can sell your books to potentially get the best return on that book. Where's the safest place to sell? Talk about fees, that kind of stuff. And we've also got one where I see these a lot, either Reddit or on Facebook groups where people post pictures of books, say what they pay, they ask how they did. So we're going to talk about that one of those posts a little bit as well. But first, this one really caught my attention because we have got a 9.8 Hulk 181. So this person says right here, I'm thinking of selling these two books, wondering if anyone has any advice on who to use. Do it privately, use a reputable dealer, auction company. Any advice would be welcomed. So there are some, I'll say, mixed responses in the comment section. That some that I'd say most that I actually kind of disagree with, and so that's why I want to give my personal take on it. Because while the responses that are in that section are generally accurate, when you're talking about really high-end, high-dollar books like that, they are no longer valid responses. And so you really do have to look at what you're selling, because what you're selling does make a difference in terms of the types of fees that you can pay, what types of deals you can make, all that kind of stuff. So we've got two books here. We have an Incredible Hulk 180, first appearance of Wolverine. And we got the first full appearance of Wolverine in 181. Now, the 180 is a 9.6, signed by Stan Lee, Herb Trimpe, and John Romita. So triple sign is pretty cool, especially when you have the Stan Lee. Like, having the Stan Lee signature on there is definitely going to add some value to this book. Then we've got Incredible Hulk 181. It's an off-white to white pages book. Looks, I mean, from here you can tell, looks really nice. It does look really clean. And this is a book that has been ranging anywhere from like $55,000 to $70,000. Now, the 180 we'll have to look into a little bit more to talk about the signatures. But if we look at 181, just to kind of get an idea what the current pricing has been for this book, we go down to a 9.8. You can see the last sale here, 72,000, but I believe there was a Comic Link sale that was quite a bit lower. But last sale this year, 72,000, that actually matched a sale even earlier in the year for 72,000. Let's see if these are white page copies or not. This one was a white pager. And then let's see about this one right here. This one was also a white pager. So that's going to make a difference, right? So the white page copies will sell for a premium. It is the way it is. So this would probably go for less. And honestly, I think the one that I swear it was Comic Link because it didn't get pulled in here. We also had this $57,000 sale here. This book is probably, like, at auction, probably going to go around 55. That would be what I would guesstimate that this 181 would go for. Now, if we look at the 180 in a 9.6, look at the 9.6, then we'll look at what the signatures might add to this book. So a 9.6, last sale, 6,500, actually big jump up there. It's ranged from as low as 3,268 to 6,500 in the last year and a half or so, it looks like. This one is an off-white page copy. So again, not a white page copy. It's probably going to hurt it a little bit. But then let's take a look at if there have been any signed copies that have sold recently where it's got these multiple signatures. You can see here, this could be the same book. Lee, Trimpe, and Romita Sr. sold for $4,000. I mean, we'll be able to tell because it should have the cert number. Yeah. So 1064. Let's see here. Yeah, same book. So, I mean, this one may have been re-slabbed. It looks like a newer slab, that kind of stuff. But same book, sold for $4,000 back in 2014. We don't really have any great comparables. Here we've got a 9.4 that in December went for $5,500 that had Lee and Trimpe versus a 9.4 going for $3,100 here. It might add like $2,000. Like, that's not unreasonable to think it's going to add about $2,000. I think the $6,500 sale is high. If this book goes at auction, it's probably going to go closer to, I would guess, like 48. So maybe add $2,000 to that. It might hit 65 with the signatures. So we probably have like a $6,500 book. That's just my rough estimate. Could be more. I don't know. $6,500 here, $55,000 here. So we've got about $62,000 in comics. Let's just say we have $60,000 in comics. The big thing, though, is that you have a 9.8 Hulk 181. This can be one of the marquee books for any given auction house on most auctions. Not all of them. There's definitely going to be some where you're going to have multi-$100,000 books that are going to trump that. But for a lot of auctions, this could be the book that's on the cover of their sales materials, or on the back cover, or somewhere where it's a focal item, because the 9.8 181s don't come up all that often. So you got to think about that, because you can make deals with these auction houses, whatever the fees are, the standard fees and all that. When you have big enough books and books that will bring in other bidders, like bidders for other things, you can work out deals. So like Comic Link, I think, is like their standard fee is 10%. I haven't heard of people working out deals with Comic Link on pricing, but I'm sure they do. Comic Connect, I think it's like 15%, somewhere in that range. Heritage is the 20% buyer's premium, but then there's also a seller's fee. So I think it's somewhere around 30%. But if you come in with a 9.8 181, you can probably get all of those numbers to go down, and it can be quite a bit lower than what the normal person is going to pay when they're selling a book. So don't think too much about what the standard fees are. You talk to the different auction houses and you work out which one's going to give you the best deal. That's probably how you approach it, because the reality is you're probably going to get a relatively similar number whether you sell it at any of the big auction houses. Heritage, Comic Link, Comic Connect, you're probably going to get around the same number. So I would focus on what fee deal I'm going to get. Now, there was one thing that somebody commented on about eBay, and they said, don't use eBay. It has really high fees. That is not correct when you're talking about big books. If you have an eBay store and you have a big book like this, or a big item, just an expensive item, eBay reduces their fees when you pass a certain threshold. So once the item gets above $2,500, everything above $2,500, at least for the store that I have, the fee goes down significantly. So there is a benefit to selling high dollar items on eBay, because your fees actually are very competitive, if not the best out there. So just something to be aware of, that if you are selling high dollar items, like there's a comment in there where someone was like, don't use eBay. The fees are super high. It's like 13.5%. It's like, yeah, it's 13.5% up till $2,500. Then it drops down to like 2.9%. So it gets really, really good pretty fast in terms of those fees. So just something to consider. So my recommendation to this person, just shop it around and see who's going to give you the best price, or the best fee deal, because I think that's going to work out the best for you. You could do a private sale. I mean, you can always try that. It can be tough when you're dealing with big books like this. You might have to use like a dealer as someone to consign it for you or something like that. But I would probably go with a big auction house and see who I can get the best deal with. Now, the next post was this one right here. So this is Amazing Spider-Man number 9. It says, well, my Amazing Spider-Man number 9 just came in the mail, paid $900 for it. Looks like it could use a clean and impress. Did I get a bargain, kids? And so it looks like a really clean copy. The tough part is that we can only see the front cover. It's at an angle. It's a little blurry. It's not like the best picture, but this one sold on eBay. I was just able to look it up and I was able to find it, especially since they said it was $900. And so this is the book that sold here on eBay for $900. And this way we can get a better look at the flaws with this book to get an idea what the grade might be for it. So then we can, make that determination. Was it a good pickup? Was it would you pay market price? All that kind of stuff. So if we jump over to GPA again, we look up Amazing Spider-Man number 9 and get an idea what this book is going for. So we're going to look at, kind of a range of grades down here. Cause I mean, it's clearly not like super high grade. This isn't like an 8.0 or a 9.0 type book, but it looks like a pretty decent book. So we got a 6.0 at 1,600. This 5.5 sale looks really low. I'd be interested if something was maybe wrong with that one. Somebody just got a good deal because it was around Christmas. I always say that auctions around Christmas, you can usually find some pretty good deals. Then we had a 5.0 in January for $13.89, a 4.5 for $13.50, which seems a little higher than a 4.0 for $7.20. So I kind of feel like 3.5 is around a $700 book, 4.0 is around an maybe $800 to $850, 4.5 is somewhere around $1,100, 5.0 is somewhere around $13, 5.5 is probably $14 to $14.50, 6.0 is around maybe again like $1,500 or so, somewhere in that range. So if the person paid $900, that would mean that you would hope the book is better than a 4, because if it was a 4, then you could have just bought a graded copy. You don't have to do anything with it, and you paid more than what a graded copy would cost. The 4.5, you start to get into where if you've got to pay for grading fees and all of that, then you're probably about breaking even. Above a 4.5, I feel like this is an outlier sale. I think you're doing pretty good. You're probably in, after grading fees and all that, you're probably profitable. So 5.0 and above. So let's take a look at this book. So front cover, I mean, it looks nice. It's got some chipping and stuff on the top there. And so let's make this a little bit bigger. So it's got some chipping along the top. Right edge looks pretty good. It's got a little bit of pre-Marvel chipping here. You can see those little tears there. If you're wondering what Marvel chipping is, this is where that comes from. You see these little tiny tears. Over time, they kind of get worse, and they might fall, the little pieces might fall off. Keep going down, a little crease down in the corner there. Spine looks pretty nice. I mean, you can see there is some wear, but spine overall does look pretty nice. I mean, to me, with this type of wear on this book, like a little bit of paper loss on the top edge, front cover, I feel like looks like about, could be as nice as a 6.5. I think it could be about a 6.5. Now let's take a look at the back cover. So we got the back cover here. We'll expand this one again. And back cover looks, I mean, it's because the front cover is dark, you can't make out any real like flaws like stains or that kind of thing. Back cover, maybe a little bit of kind of like dinginess to the back cover, but not bad. Again, a little bit of something going on here. I can't tell if that's a shadow or a little stain. A little crease down in the bottom corner here. You can see a little bit of creasing along the spine. The back cover looks pretty solid too. I mean, I'd say the back cover is like 6.5, 6.0, 6.5 type back cover. If this is some staining, maybe it gets a little bit lower than that, but it feels like a 6.0 or 6.5 back cover, especially after cleaning and pressing and all of that. Now, the issue with this book is when you start to look at the interior. So we're going to take a look at the interior here. And so here is the interior of the back cover. And so you see this browning around the edges. And we'll kind of blow this up here. This browning around the edges down here, this is tanning. So tanning can take on a lot of forms when you see it, especially I found on the interiors of the book. Like sometimes you get these like circular structures that form. Sometimes you get the kind of the dark tan lines, like this kind of looks like burning around the edges. I wouldn't say this is heavy tanning, but I would say it's moderate tanning. Like this is, I've had tanning that's worse. And I had a Golden Age book that on the outside, the book looks like an 8 or an 8.5. Once you looked on the interior, it had, CGC, I think, called it moderate tanning, but it was pretty heavy, like in my opinion. And I would say it was worse than this. It was a little worse than this. And they gave it a 5.5. So, well, a book that I felt on the exterior looked like an 8 or an 8.5 ended up getting hit pretty hard. It got knocked down to, about 3 grades, 2.5 to 3 grades. Now, the lower the grade your book is at the start, the less of an impact something like tanning is going to have. But let's look at the front cover too. So here's the front cover, and you can see it's similar. It's not quite as dark as the back cover, but you see how you get the splotchiness there. Like that's the type of thing I've seen with tanning. It can take on some different structures. Almost looks like there's maybe some staining here. That's one thing I can't really tell. Like, is this part of that tanning, or is there actually staining along the bottom? If there's staining, could be worse. But I have seen that CGC has been hitting, at least my experience was that tanning was getting hit pretty hard. And so if I said this book was, say, a 6.5, I could see this tanning knock this book down to a 4.5. I wouldn't be surprised that, this is a very nice looking book. The interior pages look like they're probably like cream. I don't think they're going to get light tan. They might get light tan to cream, but I'm going to say cream. I don't feel like they're creamed off white. I'll say straight cream pages, which is uncommon. You don't see that very often. But with the amount of tanning that I see on the interior, I have experienced some pretty harsh hits on the grade for that. You also have to be careful because when you see that, it does tend to make the paper a little more fragile. And so you can be a little cautious about, maybe spine splits showing up or staples detaching, that kind of thing when the book's being handled. So I think if this book was sent in to get graded, even with a press and a clean, which because of that tanning, you want to be a little careful with the pressing and cleaning, I think a 4.5. I think that's what that book would get. And so if we're down at a 4.5, if you remember, I felt like this, we have this 1350 sale here, which you can see like it's had some pretty big spikes. The low end 780. Like if we go to 2024, we've been ranging 810, 780, 810, 1,000. Like I felt like at a 4.5, you probably kind of paid the value of the book. Like once you send it in, you send the book in to get pressed and cleaned and graded. You're adding in another probably $80. This is one that you could probably send in the vintage tier. You could argue it's below $1,000 book. Send in the vintage tier, get your pressing and cleaning and all that. It's probably going to cost you like $80 or so for everything to be done, maybe 75. And so you've got 90 plus 70 or 900 plus 75. You're at 975. There's probably some taxes and other things that are involved in there. And so I think you're probably around this, maybe like $1,050, $1,000, somewhere in that range for what you're into the book. And so yes, there was this 1350 sale. Like you could say that there's the potential, especially because it looks good. Like this is one of those books that this book actually presents really, really well. And so the fact that it presents really well, maybe you get on the higher end of that price point. And so maybe you could get it up to like $1,200 or $1,300 or something at a 4.5. So you could have a little margin there, but I wouldn't say it was like a screaming deal. That, if the tanning wasn't there, I feel like this book could potentially be in that 6 to 6.5 range. And then this book would have been, $1,600, $1,500 to $1,600. And yeah, it probably would have been a little more of a screaming deal for that book. But in my opinion, the tanning is definitely going to hamper the grade on this one. It's gonna drop down that grade a little bit, and I think it's going to make it more or less a push. Maybe you're at like $100 profit or something like that if you decided that you wanted to press, clean, grade, and sell that book. That's my take on it. What is your opinion? What do you think that this book would actually grade out as? Yeah, like I said, I think around a 4.5, but love to hear your opinion. And I will see you on the next one.